Travel is more than just ticking off countries. It's about the people, the culture, the food, the moments. I'm Pippa Hudson, and on Wonder the World, I invite you to join me every week as we explore destinations both near and far, with the help of fellow adventurers who share their unique travel stories. Listen to my podcast wherever you get them.
PrimeMediaPlus.com. Your connection to what matters most.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teen Junction podcast with me, your host, Cindy Poluta. And as always, I am so honored that you are listening to this episode today. Thank you to everybody that's reached out to us on Instagram and Facebook with all your messages, just saying how these episodes have helped them or suggesting topics you would like us to cover in the podcast series. We look forward to hearing from all of you every week. As always, I say parenting has always been the same across all the generations. The problems are not unique, they're just in different times. But I feel like today's topic might be a little different in that I think we would all be in the same agreement that adolescents today, teenagers today, are experiencing pressure that we definitely did not have 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, we possibly also didn't know about a term called burnout. So if you're new to burnout, get ready for an amazing, amazing episode because I have the absolute expert on burnout on today's episode, Judy Klipin. Judy, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Cindy. I'm so pleased always when people want to talk about burnout because it's such a huge issue and we really do need to take it seriously.
So just for those listening, what is burnout and perhaps how is it different to stress and depression?
So burnout is basically it's a state of exhaustion. It's a state of physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, emotional, relational, and also spiritual exhaustion. So it affects us on every level of our lives. There are a whole lot of symptoms and manifestations that I'm sure we will talk about. It's quite hard sometimes to differentiate between burnout and depression and stress because particularly burnout and depression present in quite a similar way sometimes. And depression is often a symptom of burnout. When burnout progresses, it can result in a clinical depression.
Wow.
So the problem is that often burnout and depression look very similar because they're both a form of exhaustion. People feel less motivated than they used to. You could become quite socially withdrawn. Your sleep gets affected. You either eat a lot or nothing at all. There's often some self-medication with alcohol or caffeine or over-the-counter or even under-the-counter drugs. The way I differentiate between burnout and depression is understanding that they're both a form of being very, very tired. When we have burnout, we are feeling tired from our lives or by our lives. When we have depression, we are feeling tired of life.
Wow.
And so people always respond like that when I say
because
that.
it's just such an important sentence. And you and I have chatted before, and I quote this quite regularly when I counsel people and they say, I think I might have depression.
Yeah.
I say to them, okay, are you burnt out or are you depressed?
Yeah.
Are you tired from life? If you had to win the lotto tomorrow, would you still be so sad? Or are you tired of life?
Exactly.
If you won the lotto tomorrow, it wouldn't matter. And I think I always quote you, Judy, because that is just such a powerful line that I think people need to know. There is a difference between burnout and depression.
Yeah. And I think that addition that you have added about winning the lotto, I think that's brilliant, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think that it's a great answer. If you won the lotto and you had no more kind of financial stress, would you still be feeling the same way?
Yeah.
I think that's a great question.
So you could almost then, because now when we're talking about teenagers, how much of it could be a misdiagnosis? How much of, my child's anxious and has depression, but actually it's burnout? How much chance is there then of being a misdiagnosis?
Well, I think there's probably quite a big chance, but I also think that with teenagers, it's particularly hard because there's so much going on with them. There's the hormonal changes, there's the kind of grumpiness, there's the social stuff, there's the social media stuff, which I'm sure we're going to get into. But I think sometimes with teenagers, it's not either or. It's kind of a whole package.
Okay, so there's not common causes. There's not like generally when the teenagers present with burnout, these are most often the common.
No, I think there are definitely contributors to burnout. But I think what I'm saying is that in teenagers, possibly burnout is accompanied by anxiety and social anxiety and academic anxiety and stress and potentially depression as well. So it's not necessarily burnout or depression or stress or anxiety. It might be some or all of them at the same time.
Isn't it quite sad that we're seeing teenagers with burnout these days?
Yeah, it's very sad. It's not just sad, it's terrifying to me, because I think that being a teenager is hard enough.
Yeah.
You know, we all know those of us who have been teenagers.
And can remember being there. We've all been teenagers. We've forgotten a lot of it.
Exactly. It's hard. There's so much stress and social, like fitting in and am I wearing the right clothes and my friend's got the right shoes and I don't. And then this added stress of, the pressure of doing well so that you can go to university and so much competition. And it's just a lot.
Yeah.
And then, in addition to that, there is this kind of global experience of generalized stress and anxiety and competition and economic meltdowns and all sorts of things. I mean, I think it must be really hard to be a young person now because the old people are really making it difficult for them.
Because, in the past, when I think of burnout and when I initially came across this term, burnout, I always thought of a guy sitting in an office working on Wall Street in New York who worked, or in London, from 3 o'clock in the morning until 12 o'clock at night, pulling an all-nighter, getting his suit dry cleaned in the office, kind of just pulling his hair out because the markets were crashing. So to associate that with a teenager is quite frightening, because I guess what we're trying to say about burnout is it's relative to where you are in that time of your life.
Absolutely. And I think it is frightening. So there are two things that you're saying that I'd like to pick up on. The first is that burnout it's a serious disease, and if it isn't reversed early on, which it can be, and I'm sure we'll talk about how to do that, it progresses. So it starts off, feeling tired, feeling a bit unmotivated, wanting to eat more chocolate and carbs and caffeine and that sort of thing, not sleeping so well, not concentrating so well. But if we don't address it, it progresses. And it can really turn into depression, full-blown anxiety, stress, insomnia, total social withdrawal, no concentration span at all. And then furthermore, it can progress even more to things like diabetes and hypertension and heart disease and stomach ailments. And so it really is something that we need to take seriously, because if teenagers are starting to experience burnout, and particularly all of them, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual and relational sides of it.
Yeah.
If you don't intervene, then they're gonna have a very, very difficult and unhappy adulthood. Okay,
so let's talk about intervention, right?
Yeah.
How do I know that my teenager is burnt out? Because we have said it's burnout and depression. If you draw them, so often you see the graphs.
Yeah.
Burnout in a circle, and you put depression in a circle, and then they meet in the middle, and so often they overlap so much.
Yeah. So I think that the best thing you can do is talk to them and to be present. And I think that that's also part of the difficulty for teenagers now, is that not only are their parents very busy often, but they themselves, the teenagers, are busy. They're not just, gone are the days when I was at school, I used to get home from school at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was forced to do extramurals 2 days a week, which I resented terribly. And then I only got home at 3:30. But then I had the rest of the afternoon and evening to do whatever I wanted, to see my friends, to do my homework, to read my books, whatever.
Yeah.
Kids of today don't have that luxury, and it does feel like a luxury. That every waking moment often is accounted for. And so it's not as easy for parents and kids to connect and to talk about what's going on in their lives, and for the parents to see when they are overscheduled, which I have to say, I think a lot of our kids are overscheduled.
But I agree with you, and I think the school environment has a lot and a very big part to play in all of it. And not just the school. Now, don't all the schools and the headmasters and the teachers phone me and say, our school does this and this and this. I know you do. I'm talking about the education system in general. I remember matriculating, and you only really had to worry about your final matric mark.
Yeah.
These days, the kids need grade 11. They have to worry about their grade 11 mark. And then they constantly get reminded that, there's only 120,000 matrics, and there's only 8,000 spots available at university, so you better get an A for everything, right? On top of, are you playing club cricket and club soccer, and to add to that, all the extra tutoring that goes into getting your child to get that university entrance, plus as a parent you are working. So how much of the school environment is then responsible for the stress, I almost want to say it, the unnecessary stress that we are putting these children through currently?
I would agree with you. I mean, and I don't, there's no blame. Everybody's doing the best they can.
We're all just trying.
We're all just trying our best.
It's. I don't want to say it's hit and miss, but we're all navigating through it. We're all just trying to get to know better so we can do better.
Exactly. So part of me thinks that it's a global phenomenon. I mean, it is a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
This pressure on kids at school, and the need to outdo your peers so that you get a good space, and the overemphasis, I think, on a university degree, which is really one of my bugbears, because I just don't think that there are enough jobs for people with university degrees, and a lot of them would actually do better going and learning a skill like plumbing or electrical, where they would actually be able to earn money instead of having to be a waitress or something with their undergraduate degree. and university is a wonderful experience, but it's also a privilege, and it is quite a luxury. And unless you know that you are definitely going to use that degree, being a doctor or being a lawyer or whatever, I just think that it is. I think we have an overemphasis on university, and I totally understand where it comes from. It comes, I think, from our history. During apartheid, there weren't that many opportunities for most people to go to university. And so now that's a double whammy, because first of all, there are more people wanting the places.
Yes.
I mean, when I had got a terrible matric, really. I mean, I really, 2 Bs, 2 Cs, a D and an E. And I sailed into university because there was no one to compete against.
Yes.
I was only competing against other white kids.
Yeah.
Now, there's a much huger population that can go to university.
Yeah.
And also, coupled with that, because of that history and of the vast majority of people in this country not having the opportunity to go to university, now their kids who have the opportunity to go to university feel a pressure and a sense of expectation that they need to do what their parents or their grandparents couldn't do.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think people don't want to be a tradesperson, because that was an apartheid job. They want to be a professional, even if there isn't a job for them.
Yeah.
And it's really complicated.
It is.
It really, really is complicated. I think, as I said, there is crazy pressure on kids all over the world, but I think we have a particular flavor to it here in South Africa as well.
And then you study 12 years through school, and then you go and do like a 4-5-year degree. Maybe it takes you 5 years to do your degree. So by the time you finish, you're 23. You're still in adolescence because adolescence is age 11 to 25. And now you're exhausted from all the studying that you've had to do. And now your family is like, okay, well, we all sacrificed for you to go to university, and now you have to provide for us. And now exactly what you just touched on. You're sitting with a degree completely exhausted, but having to find a job that doesn't exist.
Absolutely. And that when you turn 25 and your brain kind of stops changing and solidifies, maybe you realize you didn't even want to do it in the first place, but you're trapped now.
Yeah.
I have a lot of clients who are like that they realize in their proper adulthood that actually they've chosen the completely wrong career path, but they're trapped. They're trapped. They're trapped by expectation. They're trapped by finances. They're trapped. And then they get burnout.
And then you add the social media aspect to it, right? Because now my husband and I were actually having this conversation 2 weeks ago. We were talking about our kids, and I said, remember when you were a kid and black feeler tackies were like sneakers, were like the ultimate, and everybody wanted them, right? And you felt like everybody had them. How did you know everybody had them? Well, you had to go to a party and everybody, at least 3 or 4 people had to be wearing them, and then those were the shoes to have, and then you wanted them, right? I said to him, now imagine every time you open your phone and you go on social media, anybody, anywhere in the world has that thing that everybody wants. Can you imagine the amount of stress and pressure this puts on those kids? So to add to that, you've got, I'm 21 and I got my 5th degree because I'm so smart. And you've got kids going, I'm just trying to finish grade 11, or I'm just trying to finish grade 10. I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. Yeah. But because the world has become such a smaller place, they feel like they're not achieving. I mean, we hear about Tiger Woods playing golf at the age of 3, and then you go, well, I'm not going to play golf because I didn't start at 3. So how much of the social media pressure and the marketing is leading to adolescent burnout?
So I'm not sure it would be leading to burnout, but I definitely think it contributes to that stress and that anxiety. And I suppose in a way that's that kind of pressure to perform well so that you can also be affording I'm remembering a little while ago, those ridiculous energy drinks, those
Prime.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, really. So I do think that social media has an impact on people. I think for me, burnout, it's quite simple actually. And I'm quite, I have a slightly unpopular idea about what I call the commodification of burnout, because I think that it's a huge problem. And I think that it is being made more complicated and more complex than it needs to be, because actually a lot of wellness practitioners are making quite a lot of money out of telling people about burnout. For me, burnout isn't that complicated. We get burnout when we do too much of the wrong things for us, so the things that make us stressed and exhausted and that maybe we don't really want to be doing. Like for me, maths in matric was definitely not a good idea.
It still is not a good idea for a lot of people.
Yes, exactly. But in my day, they didn't have maths literacy as an option, which made it even worse. That was what I got the E for. But so there's that. So it's too much of the things that are wrong for us, and by definition and extension, not enough of the things that are right for us, the things that feed us and nourish us. So I think burnout is simple, and it's like money. If we regard our energy the same way we regard our money, we wouldn't get hopefully we wouldn't get burnout.
Yeah. Well, depends if it's the 24th of the month.
Exactly. So today is the 24th of the month. And I mean, all kids if they get an allowance or they have a job, kids know how much money they have at their disposal. Everybody knows how much money they have at their disposal.
Yeah.
And we also know that if we spend more than we have, we run out of money, or we go into overdraft and we start owing. And energy is the same. If we spend more than we have, we run out and we go into overdraft. And if we keep pushing ourselves into overdraft, we get burnout. Now, kids may or may not have a credit card at their disposal. It doesn't really matter. They know that if they, when the money's done, the money's done.
Yeah.
And energy is the same. When the energy is done, the energy is done.
Yeah.
So we need to teach kids to be very mindful about what they are spending their energy on. And there are some non-negotiables, just like with money. There's some things you have to spend on.
Yeah.
You can't say no to
your car payments.
Your rent or your bond, your school fees for your kids. Those have to be done with kids as well, with energy as well. You have to go to school. You have to play softball twice a week or whatever. I don't know. But there are ways of making energy that balances it out. And I think that that's the problem with the overscheduling of the kids, is that there isn't enough time for them to either just be calm and just kind of come back to normal, to neutral with their energy, or to do the things they love doing, which create the energy for them, which they can then spend on the things that they don't necessarily like doing so much.
So, okay, because one of my questions is going to be then, how can parents help, their children avoid burnout? Could it be looking at perhaps a week or their 2 weeks or a calendar of a month in advance and okay, Johnny, you've got X, Y, Z on these days. These are non-negotiables. We have to do them. But let's schedule in some time for you to do something that you enjoy. And then not make the child feel bad if it's within reason. I mean, if my child said to me, well, I feel like I'm going to get my energy back if I go on a hot air balloon ride, I'm going to be like, well, that's not in the budget. But we also can't knock them or put them down for if they say, well, actually, I really want to go do this. I really want to just actually be online with my friends for 3 hours playing computer games because that's what I feel will energize me. As long as there's a healthy balance, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that we often project our own understanding of things onto our kids. So we never had social media or online computer games. So we think it's a waste of their time and their energy, but actually it isn't.
Yeah.
If that is what helps them to either come back to neutral and not be stressed and anxious, or actually feeds them, then, and obviously you have to be responsible and, make sure you know what they're up to. But absolutely, we need to listen to them and hear what they need.
Have conversations.
Yeah.
Explain to them what it is. Don't shy away from it. I suppose we could also then be hands-on. I mean, your child reaches a point where they start bringing home homework that you cannot in your life ever imagine trying to do. And all children, most children, I'm not going to say all because there will be those that don't, will leave everything to the last minute, right? And that can contribute to the burnout. Absolutely. And now your child is going, this teacher's given us a speech and that teacher's given us a test, but the teachers have spaced it out evenly. It's your child that has decided to leave everything to the last minute. So I suppose as parents, we could then support them. I mean, we are busy ourselves. We don't understand the work, but we could support them by having conversations with them about deadlines.
Absolutely. Having conversations with them about deadlines and about managing their time and energy, just like they manage their money. Like if your child says to you, I want to go on a hot air balloon, you can say, fine. Start saving up your pocket money. It is a really important life skill that we teach kids about budgeting money, and we should be doing the same with their energy.
Yeah.
So we need to be saying to them, you've got this due here and this due there, and if you leave it all to the last minute, you're not going to have enough time and energy to do justice to it. So we need to plan. But I also think that it's useful to have a conversation about why are they avoiding doing the work? Why are they leaving it to the last minute? Is it because they don't have time, because they're so busy with other stuff? Or is it because something about that task is making them anxious and it's easier to avoid it than to do it?
Yeah.
And that's an interesting conversation, because I think procrastination actually is an enormous contributor to burnout, because we think we're helping ourselves by not doing, by putting off whatever task we're avoiding. But the stress and anxiety that we create because we're not just putting it down, we kind of kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And there's this constant in the back of our minds thinking, I've got to do that speech, I've got to do that project. And it is spoiling everything else. And so if they can just, or if we can just sit with them and say, what is so hard about starting this? Maybe they don't understand it. Maybe they need to ask the teacher to explain it again.
Yeah.
Maybe it's too hard, or maybe it's boring, or, we don't know. But once you do know, then you can help them to get on with it.
Yeah, the fear of not being able to do it.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10.
And teaching kids to be honest and to ask for help when they are still kids is, I believe, one of the best gifts you can give them.
Yes. And I think very important having conversations with them from early on to say, okay, you've had a very busy week. Is there anything you would like to do?
Yeah.
Because I think as parents and as adults, well, humans, we start to become more selfish the older we get, right? So I've got my children, whatever, but they must fit in and do the things I want to do. We're not going to do the things they want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, everything within reason.
Sure.
So everything with balance. There are going to be kids, though, in grade 11 and 12 who are working their absolute butts off to get to where they are, and they are going to be burnt out. So if my child's burnt out, what are the symptoms in a nutshell? You touched on it at the start, and then what do I do? Besides coming to see you, Judy, and say, okay, guys, we're off to see Judy because, my child is burnt out. What are the symptoms? How bad must it get before I intervene? And then what is the intervention?
Okay, so as with everything, prevention is better than cure. So
yes.
Preferably they're not even going to get there. But as you say, a lot of them are already in this situation. So symptoms will be symptoms on each of those 5 levels. So physically, they'll be very tired. They won't be sleeping so well, maybe. They won't want to do exercise.
Who wants to do that? No,
well, especially when you're a teenager. But one of the biggest giveaways is the craving of sugar, carbohydrates, and caffeine. So if you see your child eating more than usual in terms of chocolates and muffins and chippies and all of those kinds of things, that is a big giveaway. Okay. Mentally, they're not concentrating so long. So, they might have been able to go into their rooms and sit down at their desks for an hour or 2, and now they're kind of jumping around after 10 minutes because our concentration gets impaired. We can't concentrate as well for as long.
If we're exhausted.
We also get brain fog. So if you're finding your child not able to express themselves as well as usual, forgetting things, that might be a symptom. Emotionally, they might be irritable. This is where it gets difficult with teenagers.
But to be fair, teenagers get a bad rep because they do have their moodiness. We're expecting them to be happy all the time. I think the moodiness, it's in waves.
Yeah,
it's not,
exactly.
So I would imagine that with burnout, it's just a mood that does not lift. No matter what happens.
Yeah. And it's just a kind of a sense of what's the point? Like, why am I even doing this? What's the point of doing this?
Yeah.
Also, maybe a bit weepy, flying off the handle a little bit more than usual. It's just, we basically, our fuses are shorter when we have burnout. It doesn't matter whether you're a teenager or an adult. It manifests in the same way. Interestingly, though, and I think that this is where it's different with teenagers, is that in terms of our relationships, often with burnout, we want to withdraw. Because we need to preserve what little energy we have.
Yes.
To do the most important things. And so that kind of social withdrawal, not wanting to do family things, just wanting to lie on your bed instead of going out for family supper or seeing your friends, whatever, that is a big indicator. Right. But again, it's also an indicator of depression. So you need to be able to ask them if they can differentiate. And then spiritually, it's just a kind of a, what's the point? Why am I even doing this? Why did I even sign up for matric 10 subjects?
Yes.
Like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the symptoms, and as I say, they progress if you don't address them. And what we can do about it is it really is to help your children manage their energy. So to help them kind of draw up an energy budget.
Yeah.
So what are the things that drain their energy? What are the things that restore their energy? What are the things that create energy for them. And then make sure that every day, or if that's not possible to do it every day, every week, their schedule includes as many things that restore or generate energy for them as drain them, so that at the very least you want to be coming out neutral.
Yeah.
You don't want to be spending more than you have, because then it's not going to end well. Optimally, where are we in now? They're nearly about to start writing prelims if they're in matric. So optimally, we need to start putting energy into their savings account. So doing a lot of things that generate energy for them, so that they can, if they need to, pull an all-nighter or, study the whole weekend. So they've got savings to draw on. But they also need to be obviously eating healthily, getting a lot of protein in, if possible. Yeah, not if possible. They do need to be eating protein. They need to be getting a little bit of exercise, fresh air, drinking enough water. I mean, those are the practical things.
Yeah.
And we need to be encouraging them to be honest, not just with us, but themselves, and asking for help where they need it.
I think as parents, we also need to be their gatekeepers.
Yeah.
I think so often we are our kids' own worst marketing department. Like somebody will say, my child fell. And you're like, well, my child's the clumsiest, Like we're not in a rush to defend them.
Yeah.
So when Granny says, well, I want all the children here for Sunday lunch because it's a tradition that's gone back 40 years and your child is under so much pressure, you have to be the gatekeeper to put the boundary back down and say, sorry, my child's going to have to sit this one out because they are depleted, as opposed to, well, we have to go along because it's a non-negotiable. I think as parents and as we are the adults, we have to look at our children and say, right, there are things in life that you are going to miss as a result of, because it's important that you actually do rest.
Absolutely. We're not only the adults, we're the custodians of them. And you're right, I do think that we have to suspend our own need to please other people and also our own need for them to, be excellent and get 20 distinctions or whatever. Not every child is wired to excel academically.
That's it. And I think as parents ourselves on social media, we shout at them for being on social media the whole time. We also have to look around and go, hang on a second. My child is not going to be like that child I saw on TikTok. Yeah. My child is not going to be like that child I saw on Instagram, because for every child, there's 500,000 who are not that. Absolutely. And that is the norm.
Absolutely. And also, but try very hard not to do that kind of humble bragging thing on your Facebook page, because I know the parents are all on Facebook, where, I'm so proud of my child. They had such a difficult year and they still managed to get 11 distinctions. Like, really?
I don't know. I would be quite proud.
Of course you're
proud. But if my child is not burnt out and depressed and then completely bombs in first year varsity.
Absolutely. There's that. But there's also then all of the other parents are seeing that, and there's be proud. But I'm just saying that I think that social media can be quite toxic. Yeah. And if other people are seeing, my parents are so proud of my older brother because he got 11 distinctions. Yeah. And everybody knows about it. I just think we need to be quite mindful about what the impact of what we are doing and saying is having on our kids.
I was having a conversation with a lady recently who told me that her niece and nephew were one of the, those students who were just so phenomenal in matric, who finished with so many distinctions and were all over the news and whatever. And halfway through first year varsity, they both bombed because they were so exhausted. Yeah. And they said, we actually don't know why we needed 11 distinctions.
Exactly.
Wish we had more fun. Yeah. Wish I'd let my hair down a little bit more because it actually counts for nothing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not taking away from the kids that do get it, but there are kids that the majority don't, and that is also okay.
And they do fine.
And if your child excels, my thing in life is I always want my kids to do well because I don't want doors to be closed for them. Right? Because I didn't do particularly well at school. So I've always said to them, study as though you want to be a doctor. That way, if you don't want to be, it's okay. But that way, if you do, you do. but not to the detriment of their mental health and wellness.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why you want them to do well enough that they can do whatever they want to do, because you are concerned about their mental health and wellness. You don't want them to feel like things have got away from them and kind of spend the rest of their lives beating themselves up. Although, having said that, I know plenty of kids who just didn't cope so well with the stress of grade 11 and matric, and who repeated a few subjects after matric and got into university.
And excel.
So really, I also think, there are very few times in our life where it's the last chance to do something well or properly. We can almost always do it again or differently.
And I think you touched on it at the very beginning, and I think this is why you and I are quite passionate about speaking about burnout, because we've both suffered burnout and suffered it in our adult years, because possibly nobody told us in our early formative years that we need to manage our energy. We were probably taught I was taught time management, but I didn't listen at all. I'm the ultimate procrastinator. I'm the ultimate person that can't say no because I've got to say yes to everybody because I'm a total people pleaser. So I know where my burnout came from. But I think it's so important that we need to teach our children because of the long-lasting effects. And I listened to another podcast recently where they were saying that loneliness and burnout and all of these kind of effects that you touched on in the beginning have the same effect on the body as a heart attack.
Yeah.
Or as a stroke.
Yeah, it's catastrophic.
So if we don't stop it now, or if we don't teach our children now, we're just setting them up for possibly disaster down the road. But it's not all that bad.
No, it's not.
It's not. And not every kid is going to get burnout. And your kid might be a kid that gets 11 distinctions and is full of energy and life and happy, and it's great. And I'm so happy for you. But there are a few that might not. So before we wrap up, Judy, if there's anything you would want parents to take away from today's conversation, or anything that, the listeners could take one action from today, what would it be?
So I think that one of the most powerful things that you can do for yourselves and your children is to learn to listen to your body. Because our body is telling us what we need and we override it. And that's why we overspend our energy, because we are pushing ourselves too far. We're having another energy drink or another coffee or whatever, because instead of resting when we are tired, or drinking another glass of water or whatever. So I think that if you can start every day with 5 or 10 or hopefully 20, but I know that's a bit unreasonable, so we'll settle for 5 or 10 minutes of just being still and quiet and asking yourself the 3 questions, which I get all of my clients to do. And those are, the first question is, what am I feeling? Not how am I feeling, but what am I feeling? Physically, emotionally, whatever. So it might be, I've got a bit of a sore throat today. It might be, I'm tired. It might be, I'm anxious. Then question 2 is, why am I feeling this way? I've got a sore throat because I was shouting at the dog. Or
I'm exhausted.
I'm tired because I didn't get enough sleep last night because I was up late watching Netflix. I'm anxious because I've been procrastinating about something and it's due tomorrow.
Yeah.
Question 3, what do I want to do about it?
Okay.
Have a rest, go to bed early tonight, take a paracetamol, do the work.
Yeah.
Ask for help. Ask mom to sit down with me and plan how I'm going to do this project.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to do it for me, but she can help me think through what it's going to look like and what I have to do about it. So, i.e., ask for help. But those 3 questions, they're so simple, but they really are powerful.
Yeah.
Because they help us to reconnect with ourselves and to figure out what we need and then to give it to ourselves. So question 3 is actually very important, because if we don't do it's one thing to know what we're feeling and why we're feeling that way.
Yeah.
But if we don't take action to address it, then, that's not going to help anything.
And as adults, we can even ask ourselves that question. So wake up in the morning and I say to myself, what am I feeling? I'm feeling overwhelmed. Why am I feeling this way? Because I can see my teenager is struggling. How am I going to help that today? When they come to ask me for help, I'm not going to say not now or I'm not busy. I'm going to address it and I'm going to try and help them.
Exactly.
And we can use that in our everyday lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should be using it in our everyday lives. The other thing that I would suggest is in those 5 or 10 minutes of checking in with yourself, write a little to-do list of everything that you have to do and then assess. I have a red Cokie, a green Cokie and a blue Cokie. And I put a mark next to each item that I have to do. If it's draining my energy, it gets a little red dot. If it's energy neutral, it gets a blue dot. And if it's generating energy for me, it gets a green dot. And then I count up all the dots. And if they're more red than green and blue, I know that I either have to remove some of the red or I have to add some more green and blue to balance it out. And that doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be complicated. No. But that is a way of balancing your budget daily.
Yeah.
And again, the parents can do that with the kids. You can look at their to-do lists and you can say, do you really have to go to this party that you've put a red dot next to?
Yeah.
Will it help if I say I'm not letting you go to the party and I give you the permission to
the green
say
dot?
No?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that social pressure is so huge.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to say I can't come to the party because mom says no than it is to say, sorry, I'm too tired to come to the party.
And in your 40s, sometimes you wish you could still say, sorry, I can't come to your party because my mom said I can't
Absolutely.
But thank you so much, Judy, for your time today. As always, so invaluable. I mean, I know your work is predominantly with adults. You've got 3 brilliant books out. Your most recent one being Make Work Work for You, which if you're an adult listening and you're thinking, hang on a second, Judy and Cindy just went through all the symptoms of burnout and I think that's me. Yeah. Never mind my teenager, that's me. Judy Klipin is your person.
Thank you. And thank you for having me and again for taking this so seriously. Just, Cindy, it is so important that you're doing this work now because if the kids can learn now how to avoid burnout, they are going to have such a different experience in their adulthood. It's such a gift, honestly.
It is. I wish I had learned it sooner.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Judy, and thank you to all and everyone listening to today's episode. We hope that you've taken something away from it, if not anything. You can contact Judy Klipin. She does have a website. It's Judy, Klipin.
Sorry, the website is now Make Work Work for You.
Make Work Work for You is the website. No problem. Absolutely no problem. If you want to reach out to us, you can on Instagram and Facebook, The Teen Junction. You can DM us. Thank you to everybody who has reached out. We look forward to suggestions on what you feel we should be covering in our upcoming episodes. Till then, be kind.
The Teen Junction with Cindy Poluta. Empowering teens one conversation at a time.